What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, December 5th, 2019. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. And I want to start off, first of all, with a bit of an apology. We're having a technical issue with the YouTube feed. Now, I read a story about there being some kind of a problem with the internet that's affecting the entire country, and it seems to be affecting us because we're not getting the bandwidth that we had been getting here with our hardwire setup. So it's kind of tough living in a third world country where the technology just is not resilient here. And Dave is working on trying to fix things and get it all back working again. And but from time to time, the image is going to freeze on the YouTube, and you will get that little static green card that shows up every once in a while. Now, the other thing I need to mention, today is Claire and my 25th wedding anniversary. And I keep insisting to her, this is the aluminum anniversary. And as you just heard in the distance there, Claire's saying, no, it isn't. It's something else. I don't know. Maybe it's the pottery anniversary or something like that. And we have a family event that we're going to, but because it's tied in with an event at the local school, I'm having to leave half an hour early from today's show, and so they're going to play a tape, and you'll get to see that. But we have 2.5 hours of show here to do, and I'm just going to ignore this YouTube display here and get into doing the news. And speaking about Christmas, the snowflakes are out there trying to muck it up for everybody else here. And apparently there was this gentleman who put up a festive home display. Basically, it cost him 220 British pounds. And they branded his festive home display. The neighbors said, it's tacky. And they literally put a poison pen letter through his door. And he responded to that by putting up more lights and a 6-foot inflatable elf brandishing a copy of the mean letter. Now, of course, here in Santa Claus, Indiana, they take Christmas very, very seriously here. As a matter of fact, we got a notification from the local homeowners association that they're going to be coming up with the viewing trail, as it were, this Sunday. And so they're saying, everybody turn your lights and displays on if you want to be considered for the tourist route, as it were. And they're offering a prize for the best decorated house. And some of them, they've really done it up. They take their Christmas seriously around here, and I don't blame them with a name like Santa Claus. So the displays are up. Claire and I are probably going to put our tree up over the weekend here. And we're not trying to win the party, the prize rather, because we just don't have that kind of money. But we're going to get our little tree up and show that, you know, we do care about where we're living here. And but again, around here, there's no such thing as going overboard on Christmas. It looks like it's really going to be something to see when it's all up there and running. Meanwhile, of course, and this actually made Fox News, you're familiar with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and it's kind of like a standard of the holiday season, just like a Charlie Brown Christmas and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And Rudolph has been broadcast on TV every year since 1964, but the liberal snowflakes are out there saying, you know, it portrays bullying, and for that reason, it should be taken away. It should be taken off the air. And it seems like these liberal snowflakes, they basically want to end all of the traditions that we have connected to all of the holidays. And we'll have some examples later on in the show about just how overboard they can go with their whining and complaining, and frankly, I'm a little fed up with all of this nonsense here. All right, getting into our domestic politics here. Yesterday's Nadler hearing is being described as basically a disaster. The stars, if you will, were these three college professors, none of whom had ever actually witnessed Donald Trump interacting with the president of Ukraine. They just came in to give their analysis about if, in fact, he did this, it would be impeachable. Well, they don't know for a fact what has gone on there. In fact, the Democrats have not actually called any witnesses that had any direct evidence whatsoever that Trump had engaged in negative behavior. So everybody's saying this is a fake impeachment hearing, was part of the Patriots' plan. It needed to go mainstream first, and basically it's a sales job. The people need to be educated on how the administration should never work with a foreign government to interfere with the U.S. elections, except, of course, there's no proof that the foreign government interfered with the U.S. elections. Again, it's all rumor, innuendo, and supposition. And it's just a huge negative. All right, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And we're going to take a phone call from James in Tokyo. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Hey, first of all, I want to wish you a very, very happy anniversary. Congratulations to you and that lovely harp-playing angel. But I am quite angry at you. About 14 years ago, I sent about 7,233 love letters to Claire, and you threw them all away. You didn't give her one letter, and it took me 13 years of intensive therapy to get over it.
Okay, well, you know, I'm a very jealous, possessive husband. What can I tell you?
Anyway, congratulations. Hey, Mike, when you moved to Indiana, did you have your car shipped to you?
Yes, we did.
Oh, that's too bad. I was going to recommend you the Elizabeth Warren car, which would be really good in the snow that you're going to get soon from the global warming. It's white, but it's the Elizabeth Warren car. It's white, but it calls itself a Cherokee.
Yes.
Anyway, I saw the impeachment hearings, and in spite of, like, they were asking, like, do you have any, evidence of crimes? They said no. And what was it? Matt Gaetz said in the last time, under Schiff, we asked them if they have any evidence under crimes, and they said no. So it's like, what are you doing? And then Nancy Pelosi comes out and it's like, well, we want to impeach. And I think it's getting very crazy. And I think it's really going to hurt the Dems in a very, very serious manner. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they've definitely hoisted with their own petard on this one. And they basically wasted a lot of everybody's time and a lot of money, basically on the assurance that if they simply dug far enough and hard enough, they would find something on Trump that they could use. But they basically came up empty. But yes, Nancy Pelosi is moving ahead with articles of impeachment to go before the House, and it'll probably pass there. And so they'll be able to go into 2020 saying, well, Trump got impeached. How could you reelect him? He got impeached. So that's going to be their saving face, for the 2020 elections. But they had absolutely nothing. Now, the corporate media, of course, is saying, oh, yes, they've got him. They've definitely got Trump in a bind. But for anybody who actually watched those hearings, it was a huge bust.
It was a real big bust. And I don't think they're going to be able to extend that for a year. I think, they're messing with Trump. He's a very smart guy, has a great legal team, and they're going to put it in the Senate real quick. And they're going to screw up all the Dems running for president in different offices, calling him in. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Hey, you had Dustin from New Jersey calling yesterday, and it was my favorite
Yes.
call that he ever did. He finally said, "Hey, could someone tell me what does rent cost in California?" And about a week ago, or maybe a little over a week ago, I said, "Hey, Dustin, you're always saying, things are bad, nothing changes. Try and get out of Dodge. I mean, New Jersey, and go somewhere better and where it's cheaper." Like, that's what you did, Mike. You got out of Hawaii, went to Indiana. I'm hoping that you have a really great lifestyle with your beautiful wife for forever. And, maybe if he did something like that, things might be better. And I just saw him kind of changing a little bit. And even before I even said that, I think there was something that Tom of Florida, he's a really great caller. You have a lot of great callers, Tom and,
Yes, I
and
do.
Pete from L.A. Yeah, you have so many great people. And even Dustin's great. I mean, as long as he calls once a day, I think he's great. But, everybody's great. And I really like seeing Dustin kind of, wow, maybe I'm in New Jersey and maybe I could get out and, somewhere better and this and that. And, he was like, trying to find information. He's just not saying anything. And I really appreciated that from you, Dustin. And Dustin, I wasn't criticizing you like the week, 10 days ago when I said, well, maybe you should go to Ukraine. Because you said, I don't know much about you except you're in your 50s and you have Ukrainian blood. But I really do think Ukraine is a great place. I mean, the best woman in the entire world, and a beautiful architecture, great food, very inexpensive compared to any other place that I've been, and I think you would enjoy that. And oh yeah, Mike, the last thing. I was joking yesterday about well, don't tell me that you believed that I said that Angela Merkel was going to reopen Auschwitz.
Well, she wasn't reopening it, but she was definitely going for a visit there. And of course, that was going to create a very awkward moment because, Germany still carries the stigma of whatever it is that's supposed to have happened under the Nazis. And that's not fair to the Germans of today who weren't even alive back then when it was all going down. And it's sort of along the lines of what Putin was saying. NATO was created to oppose the Soviet Union, but the Soviet Union's gone, the Warsaw Pact is gone, and we should all go back to being friends and engaging in business with each other. Well, the same thing applies to the Germans of today. Israel pushes this idea of collective historical inherited guilt, and I reject that notion completely. I had nothing to do with the Holocaust, as we are taught it happened in school. For that matter, neither did the Palestinians. And yet Israel uses the Holocaust to extract money from our government, to extract obedience from our politicians, and to oppress the Palestinians, who had nothing whatsoever to do with whatever it was that happened in Germany.
Michael, I asked you not to tell me that. But anyway, she reversed her role because Greta Thunberg went up to her and said, "How dare you offer the free gas and the free showers to the Muslim-hating people of Germany, who the Muslims rape and kill all the people, and the carbon is going too high. How dare you?" So she did 180 reversal. That's all I have to say, Michael. Have a good day.
All right, same to you, and we're going to switch over to Chance in West Virginia. Aloha, Chance. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Did I hear you correctly in the beginning of your show? A gentleman was threatened about his Christmas lights, and he turned around and doubled them. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. And, his neighbors were threatening him, saying that the display in his home was tacky and that they were all in favor of the Christmas spirit, but he really needed to tone it down. Well, it's really none of their business anyway. But apparently somebody Somebody threatened him,
sorry.
and so he doubled up on the lights and added the 6-foot elf with a copy of the letter that he was sent through the mail slot on the door. So and like I said, you know, here in Santa Claus, they take their Christmas very, very seriously. In fact, there was a thing on the radio the other day. You know, we have a post office here that offers a special postmark through the month of December, and they're expecting 400,000 pieces of mail will come through that post office to get that special Christmas postmark.
Well, God bless that gentleman's soul, Michael. Let me tell you, that's the only way to handle these Bolshevik communists. Whether you celebrate Christmas or not, you can't let these people defeat you. If they complain about a manger on your property, what you do is you turn around and you put 2 or 3 more on your property. It has nothing to do. We can't let these people push us around. You know, I would love to send that gentleman a Christmas card. Not a season's greeting card or a happy holidays card, but a Merry Christmas card. I really would. We can all learn from that gentleman. He refused to back down. If we all did this, this crap wouldn't get us far. We could nip this in the bud immediately if we had the intestinal fortitude to react like that gentleman did. Don't you think?
I absolutely agree. And, you know, the neighbors who do this sort of thing, I mean, they're basically adopting the methods of terrorists to get their way. You know, we think your display is tacky, and, you know, they put a note through the door saying, you know, bad things will happen to you if you don't tone down your display. And I figure what's going on here is these other people don't have the money to put up a display that can compete. So rather than just have, you know, this one house that looks really good and decorated in holiday spirit, they figure if they can shut him down, then all are sort of looking equally celebratory.
Well, God bless his soul for standing up. That's all I can say. That's someone we can all learn from. Whether you believe in the holiday or not is immaterial. The point is he took a stand. God bless him. Okay, Michael, thank you for taking my call now. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. We're going to let you go here. All right, so we're talking about the Democratic hearings, the impeachment hearings. We're talking about the fact that Nancy Pelosi has announced that they are moving forward with articles of impeachment. Now, unless they can get a number of senators to betray their own party, this is going to stop dead in the Senate. Or maybe they're just going to figure, you know, Clinton was impeached but not removed by the Senate, but it followed him around politically for the rest of his career. And maybe that's what they're going for, that they'll actually rush through the impeachment through the House of Representatives, and it'll basically die in the Senate. And they can say, well, it was all the Senate's fault. They were under GOP control, blah, 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 blah. And basically take the focus off the fact that this never should have gotten this far in the first place. I mean, what they're doing is very damaging to the nation. It's damaging to the Constitution. It's going to forever change America, you know, with these show trials for political gain, which is exactly what this is. So basically, this is not working. And right now, the Trump impeachment show trials are now completely underwater in the swing states. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now from Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, just to add to your last caller, in the holiday season, I agree with him. If somebody complains about something, I mean, it's just a limited time that we put up our decorations. But, you know, I hear the music all the way.
Yeah, I'm going to put you on hold. We'll come right back to you right after these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Steve Elkins. We're talking about Christmas decorations. Now, when I was growing up, the Christmas season, if you will, began right after Thanksgiving, You know, there was the tradition of Santa appearing in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and that sort of ushered it in. But even back then, they were kind of pushing it to sort of magnify, if you will, the shopping season. And before that, you know, Christmas was kind of 2 weeks long. You'd put up your decorations, you'd have your Christmas celebration, and you'd take the decorations down. And in my grandfather's house, it would always be a live tree. And I'm old enough to remember they actually had little candle holders on the tree branches. This is before electric tree lights came along, to just give you an idea of how old I am. And my grandfather, when Christmas was over, all the decorations came down Christmas afternoon. And he'd take the remains of the tree outside and he'd drill holes in it and fill the holes with peanut butter, and that would attract all the birds. And so you had this very natural, environmentally friendly Christmas tree out there stuck in a snowbank in front of the house, covered with all these blue jays and cardinals. And that's what Christmas is. But again, around here, the customs are a little different. And we're just going with the flow here. I mean, I think this is going to be the first time we've put up the Christmas tree since I think about 4 or 5 years ago when we were still in IAEA. And we put that one up back then just because it had been so long since we'd had a tree in Kaneohe. But again, it's a matter of personal preference. And, you know, I don't feel like, you know, doing the electronic display that we saw in that National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, where they, you know, basically had to fire up the spare nuclear reactor to power it all. And it is a hit on the grid. But you're absolutely right. Congratulations and kudos to this guy to standing up to the neighborhood bullies. Because, again, it's, you know, they are free to put up as much or as little decorations as they feel like doing, and they have absolutely no right to come around to anybody's house and say, really, you've got too much stuff out there and it's tacky and we don't like it.
No, I agree. I'm proud of him for standing up for his rights there to do that. Actually, I had somebody on a show with Vincent Finelli, and I had a guy on in Minnesota that actually had a little statue, a 17-inch statue, in his garden of Mother Mary, and evidently it violated HOA rules, and so they sent him a letter, and of course he's going to get a fine if he didn't remove it. Of course, you know, they had no problem with putting little gnomes in your yard and all these other different things, but having a statue of Mother Mary was a violation of HOA. So he called him out. We brought attention to it. And they finally backed down and trying to save face to apologize. He said, I want it in writing. And he got to keep his little statue of Mother Mary in his garden. But, yeah, you got to push back on these people.
Okay, we had a little burst of sound there. When I was living in Southern California, there was this one house up in Covina that had been painted in Christmas style, you know, red and white stripes. And it was a permanent year-round altar, if you will, to Christmas. And a lot of people in the neighborhood really didn't like that. But this was back in a time when people had respect for each other's point of view. And the attitude was, well, this is a little over the top, but it's not our house. And so, you know, we're not really going to say anything about that. But in this case, it's just over the top for these neighbors to be doing that. And as I said before, next it'll be, you know, they'll see the Easter depicts cruelty to animals, and they're going after all of our old traditions and holidays. And I refuse to give them up. Now, I'm not a Christian, but I have a lot of fond memories of Christmases past, and I'm not going to give that up.
Well, good for you, Mike. I wouldn't either. You did bring back some memories, though. I grew up in Indiana, in the Indianapolis area. So I'm actually very familiar with your area, Santa Claus, Indiana, because we have a Christmas Florida out here near Orlando, Kissimmee. And the same thing, people all want their letters and their packages stamped with Christmas Florida. But we had a tradition back when I was a kid growing up. We took our old Christmas trees and we gave them, they turned them over to the city, and the city put them on the lakes and on the ice. And when the ice melted, they actually made nice habitat for the fish. And we had great fishing on the lakes, all the rest of the year. So there's a lot of nice things could be done with that. But I just wanted to say one last thing real quick, if I can. For those people, when you do your checkout and you do your shopping, and they say Merry Christmas to you, congratulate them for not being politically correct. And if they are politically correct them and say it's Merry Christmas. I'm good with that.
All right, well, we got to take another break for commercials here, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about domestic politics. And Nancy Pelosi has basically announced that the House committee is going to go ahead with filing articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. And it'll probably pass on a straight party line vote, even though there's no crime there. And, Adam Schiff was asked point blank, have you actually found a crime Trump committed? And Schiff had to say, no, we haven't, but we just think his behavior is impeachable. And they got those three professors to come on, and all three professors were handpicked by the Democrats to come on out and say, well, yes, his behavior is impeachable. So Pelosi is out there saying that they're going to move ahead with articles of impeachment. And again, it's not going to get through the Senate. They're not going to actually remove him from office. Now it's all political theater. They want to go into the 2020 campaign saying, Trump got impeached. How could you vote him back in, if he got impeached? You want to vote for somebody who's never been impeached, like Jimmy Hoffa and Charles Manson and Bill Clinton. No, wait, Bill Clinton did get impeached. Now, Adam Schiff, his crimes are piling up. This guy's committing criminal acts, and he's been caught spying on the Trump legal team and on Devin Nunes. Apparently, he got hold of all kinds of phone records and just leaked them out. I notice there's no indictment against him here. The Democrats also on the House Judiciary Committee killed a motion that would have required Chair Adam Schiff to testify in the impeachment inquiry, which seems odd given how central his office has been in the whistleblower complaint that sparked the inquiry in the first place. Now, Republican Doug Collins motioned to require Schiff to testify before the House Judiciary Committee, transmitting a letter requesting the same. The Democrats on the committee voted it down. You don't need to hear from Adam Schiff. Just take our word for it. Trump's a bad guy. When they wrote the Constitution, they should have put in, we're allowed to impeach somebody just for being, a fat, overbearing bore. And they left it out. But we have a chance to fix that now. Apparently, House Judiciary Chairman Gerald Nadler actually nodded off during his own impeachment hearing. So it must have been really, really exciting in that room here. And again, the four witnesses testifying to the House Judiciary Committee have never actually witnessed any of Trump's dealings with Ukraine firsthand. Now, speaking of Adam Schiff, his relationship with Ed Buck is coming back because, as you know, Ed Buck had killed two different guys. He hired these male prostitutes. He forced them to accept injections of meth, and we don't know how many people he's done this to who survived, but two of them didn't. Two died of meth overdoses. And reason it took so long for this to come to the surface is that elitist white male California politicians deliberately sabotaged and prolonged the investigation for over 2 years. So Adam Schiff derailed the murder investigation of Gemma Moore's death in Ed Buck's meth drug den. No, but he wrote really big checks to the Democrats, and that makes it okay. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, yesterday I was talking about how this impeachment will probably red pill a lot of Americans, which it is in the process of doing. But one person that also needs to be red pilled is President Trump himself. And what he needs to be red-pilled about, in my view, most importantly, is that Donald Trump's always been very pro-Israel, and he's always had a lot of Jews around him. You know, Roy Cohn was like his attorney when he grew up, taught him a lot of tricks. And he also has been very tolerant of gays, you know. But what you see in this whole impeachment attack and deep state attack against the president are Jews and gays. And well, you know, Jews are, you know, dual loyalists, a lot of them. They're Zionists, and a lot of them are Marxists, and they want to overthrow the order of the Christian country that we have here, which isn't really Christian very often, but just a traditional family thing, just like what they did in the Soviet Union. But it's the gays that I think that people are missing. They're not, you know, this CIA guy, Chlamydia or Ciaramella, the whistleblower CIA guy, he's a homosexual. And his lover is actually on Alan Schiff's, one of his aides, you know? So, aides, yeah. That's a good, funny word, isn't it, when you're talking about homosexuals? But, you know, it used to be like you couldn't be a gay and be in the FBI or the CIA. And now you're seeing the reason why, Mr. Trump, and America. So you know, I talked yesterday about watching the committee and all the Jews and the blacks, you know, who wanted to see, you know, attack Trump and impeach him. But you also got to throw in the gays. You have to become gay aware also in this thing. I mean, we got to see the two gay professors yesterday, that Harvard guy and that woman who says she's a bisexual, the snarky Jewish woman.
Yeah,
and
we're going to be talking about her.
Like I said, I think that I'm hoping that Trump gets a nice lesson here in who you can trust, you know, because for some reason, you know, being gay, I think it's part of the lifestyle that they're naturally seditious, and that's why they weren't supposed to be allowed to be in the security services or the intelligence community. I have to be very cautious
about, you know, first of all, I don't like people to just paint with this incredibly broad brush. Now, the reason that in days of old, gays were not allowed in the FBI or the CIA was because of the potential that they could be blackmailed. You know, over their homosexuality. J. Edgar Hoover lived in fear of that his entire tenure at the FBI. Today, it is so well accepted, that's not a factor any longer. And, you know, people can hire gays without concern that they might be blackmailable. But the question Trump needs to be looking at is why these people that he supported for so long, why are they turning on him?
Well, I think that part of the reason I don't trust gays or Jews for that matter, not, you know, I always judge people, you know, individually, but as a group, I have to say you have to be a little more wary. And the reason is because they have an issue with society, the traditional society, the way it is. They almost have a hatred for it. And that's why they generally, you know, the gays in America, 90% of them you'll see out there protesting Trump, and you'll see them doing their hysterics. And, you know, at all their gay events and stuff, it's always, you know, Trump this and Trump that, and the family and the church. You know, so that's my point about you have to beware. I think that's part of the reason why they were not wanted in our security and intelligence community back when the security and intelligence community was pro-America, pro-family. But now our security and intelligence community has been taken over by communists and globalists and New World Order socialists. So they of course, they are recruiting gays. They love having gays in the CIA now because they know at heart they want to overthrow the order of the society, and that's why I consider them somewhat dangerous, and I'm very wary of them. And I think Trump would be smart to also be wary of them for that reason. And the same way I feel about Jews. Jews have a natural tendency to despise their host countries for some reason. The traditional Christian countries, they go in there, and next thing you know, they want to stop your Christmas parade because the word Christmas offends them. You know, or they stop. Back when I was growing up in Long Island, they had music at the Manhasset train station, and they had to stop the Christmas music because a few Jews got offended. So this, you have to. I mean, I know people get wound up, you shouldn't call it, but let's call it the way it is. I mean, they're just shit stirrers, excuse my French. It is what it is. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish I didn't see so many Jews and so many gays and so many blacks behind all these degenerate, attacks on traditional values and our president and all these other things. But let's be honest about it. It's the way it is, and I hope that Trump starts to realize. I think every American should start realizing that you got to keep a wary eye on these people. I'm sorry, but that's the track record, and I go by track records. I'm sorry. I go in a black area in Baltimore. I did spend a lot of time in Baltimore. I'd be wary, and it was smart to be wary because there's a higher crime rate. You're more likely to get knocked in the head and to have your wallet taken in a black neighborhood. It's just the way it is. So, it's the same way. So I think that watching these hearings I hope they continue every day, because yesterday it was great to see the professors in the educational system and the university system just shown to be a bunch of political hacks and Stalinist Marxists that they are. I thought it was great that the American people got to see that. But I tell you the truth, I think the American people are starting not to watch it because they got other things to do.
Oh yeah, the ratings for the impeachment hearings are definitely down there in the toilet, and Americans they're burned out on it. It's dragged on for way too long, and it's kind of like watching a movie, and you're waiting for the villain to finally make an appearance, and he never does, and so there's no end to this story. It just goes on and on and on and on.
Well, I think it'll get a boost in ratings when it goes to the Senate, and then once, of course, obviously in the Senate, that's when President Trump will be able to bring his witnesses. Although he better be careful because there's still a lot of rhinos in the Senate that could double cross him, and I think Bolton might be a surprise turncoat on Trump right at the last minute. You never know; he could invent something or just say total baloney, but he might just be sitting there seething with hatred for Trump, for all you know. So I think he better watch that too. But what interests me is like what's going to happen before this D-class thing? This Pfizer IG report comes out. That Lionel thinks that President Carter or Ginsburg, they might be dying. Something the Democrats are going to want something big to take that information off the news. So you can expect a shooting or some false flag or somebody big and important to die before the 11th or right around there. This coming weekend, just watch out. I think Jimmy Carter should be careful, because death of a president will just knock most of this information off, and I think he's in a hospital now. So I don't know, but like I said, this is very interesting times, and the Democrats definitely raised the stakes. But I think it's, I hope they impeach him at Christmas, and I'm going to say by next Christmas, the people that support Trump will have the last laugh, because Trump will be getting ready to be reinaugurated, and he will have a Republican House to go along with it, and it won't be, and by then, hopefully the deep state's exposed, which should happen shortly.
Well, it's pretty much exposed now, but unfortunately, it's not like they're wearing uniforms and badges that says I'm part of the deep state. But I think most Americans are now aware that there's the temporary government that they voted for, and then behind that is this permanent ruling bureaucracy that just continues on and continues on, and pushes for more military interventions.
Well, I think one of the greatest things that will happen with this exposure is the destruction of the mainstream media. And because I think the mainstream media has totally been shown to be a tool of the Democrats and a tool of the deep state and globalism. And I mean, that's really, not only do I want to see Comey and Brennan and all those people frog march, but I'd love to see, people that were given information and people that were part of the orchestration of these events with the intelligence community exposed and punished, because some of these media organizations, there's a big difference between leaking and reporting stories and actually being part of a conspiracy. And some of them actually were parts of the actual conspiracy. So I'd like to see, when we'll see where this goes, but personally, this is where we're going to learn if Trump's for real or not. I mean, is he going to release the Kraken? And right now he's really got a justifiable case for fighting totally dirty, and I hope he does.
Well, I think there's too much fighting dirty going on already. And again, I want to be cautious about painting with a broad brush saying, all the Jews are bad, all the blacks are criminals, all the gays are whatever. There are good people and there are bad people. And unfortunately in our society, which has become corrupted, only the corrupt rise to the top. And that's really what we're looking at, is not people who are black or gay or Jewish. They are simply corrupt, and they fit in perfectly with our current power structure.
Well, that's true, but generally there's a higher rate of criminal acts by blacks, and you can go look at the FBI statistics. I could go into the genetic reasons and the brain issues and all that,
but
and I'm just talking about.
We have to remember there's a lot of black people who are not criminals. Okay, and that's all I'm asking that we do.
No, and I know that. I mean.
Okay, well,
yeah, I agree.
That wasn't the way you were coming across a little earlier in this dialogue, okay? There are a lot of Jews who are very honest, hardworking people. There are a lot of gays that are perfectly okay and make good neighbors. And, that's why I say don't paint.
I got along great with them, but
don't paint with a really broad brush. That's all I'm saying. Be cautious. Talk about individuals.
Right, Mike, but it's okay to point it out when you see all the people that are on the committees that are attacking Trump are part of that coalition. I mean, why can't I say it without being dressed down about it? I should say it just like if there was a ton of Italians after Trump.
Without saying it's all the gays and it's all the Jews. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, listen, got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back.
Okay, good night.
Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and we're going to go right back to the phones to Frank in Pennsylvania. Aloha, Frank. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Frank, okay, Mike, yeah, wonderful show.
Yeah,
the last caller brought up some really... Yes, I'm here now, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes. Very good, Michael. All right, the last caller brought up a really interesting point that, if you say, the Jews, people get offended. But if you think about mainstream media and the way they make us hate other nations, they always say, the Iranians are behind all the terrorism, or the Palestinians want to destroy Israel, or the Russians are behind the hacking. I mean, it's like every Russian had a computer secretly trying to hack our election. They make us hate other people. But if you say that, well, there might be a lot of Jewish involvement in the impeachment, all of a sudden it's anti-Semitic. Well, you know what? If mainstream media return to, will get their verbiage correct and not say not every single Iranian is behind terrorism and not every single Palestinian wants to destroy Israel and not every single Russian was trying to hack our elections, it'd be more plausible. But they don't do that, Mike. What they do is they create a situation where they make us hate all people. They've done this with the Iraq War. They made us hate the Iraq people for no reason. And it caused a war over a lie And they brung us into how many soldiers got killed and how many innocent civilians got killed. So the problem is the mainstream media. But who is controlling the mainstream media? Who are the big bureau heads that control that are creating that type of environment? It's the people that you cannot say anything about. Or if you do, you be labeled, oh, you're just anti-Semitic or anti-this, anti-that. We got to be honest with our conversation. I mean, I guarantee you, the whole next year will be about Russians. The Russians, it'll hack the election. They're going to do it again. And Iranians want to create nuclear weapons. Like every single Iranian wants to make a nuclear bomb in their house or something. It's ridiculous what they're doing. And I think people are getting fed up with it. You know, nobody should be held above any other person. And if a lot of Jewish involvement is in the impeachment, call it out for what it is. And what I see is a lot of people that are trying to impeach Trump are of the Jewish faith for whatever reason. And I know Trump bent over backwards for Israel. He gave them a lot of land. He's moved their embassy for them. You know, what else can he do to please them? And yet they still want to get him out of office. I don't understand it, Mike. Now, maybe you can explain it a lot better than I can. But Trump's done everything to please these people. And all they want to do is trump up charges and get him the heck out of office. Doesn't make no sense.
Well, I've been trying to figure this out all along because it's not just Israel. Trump has given pretty much all the major power players what they've wanted. You know, the wealthy and the corporations got a tax cut. Ordinary Americans did not. Supposedly there's progress being made on a border wall, but it's still wide open in large places. Trump campaigned on getting us out of these foreign wars. The wars are still going on. And I think what it is that Trump is seen as an outsider. The reason they can't find anything, any crime to impeach him on is he hasn't committed any crimes. In that entire room, you know, everybody there's guilty of something. And because Trump is not part of that clique, they want him out. Anyway, we've got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. And we're going to go right back to the phones again. Dave in Michigan. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Mike. Merry Christmas to you in Santa Claus, Indiana. Hey, I think I'd like to tell everybody what the Fukushima... I'm sorry. You hear me?
Yes, I just said thank you. There seems to be a bit more of a delay in our phone calls than normal, so it's going to make it a little tricky. But thank you very much for your kind thoughts. What's on your mind?
You're welcome. Well, I'd like to tell everybody what the Fukushima's going on. I came up with a little ditty that I think sums it all up. All we got to do is ask our favorite relatives, Uncle Sam, an anti-Semite, Uncle Ben, an Antifa. They'll tell you it's not real, it is real, and it's all by design.
Yes. It's very clever.
Thank you. I think it sums it up pretty good. Go ahead.
Anything else?
No, the delay is kind of a little distracting, so I'll just listen. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for the phone call. Yeah, that's something that we had taken care of. There was this story that I saw early today where apparently there is some problem with the entire nationwide internet, and it appears to be affecting us both on our YouTube channel and our audio feed as well. So again, apologies, and we're going to start putting a little more kibble into that little wire cage with the mutant hamster in it that runs in circles and powers all of this stuff here. Okay. Now, a lot of people are making a fuss over this angry Democratic witness, Pamela Karlan, who basically she's pro-Hillary. She's a very angry Hillary Clinton donor. She was on Hillary's list for a potential Supreme Court nomination, and she was brought in to testify against President Trump. And of course, because like the other so-called witnesses, she didn't actually witness anything, and she made the mistake of dragging Barron Trump's name into the discussion. And according to Laura Ingraham, apparently Democrats laughed and applauded when Pam Karlan attacked Barron Trump. Well, obviously, Melania was not happy with that at all and went on out and tweeted that this was very inappropriate. So Pamela sort of apologized while at the same time taking another shot at Donald Trump, all in the same sentence here. The leftists, in turn, attacked Melania Trump for defending her son Barron. And great deal of profanity involved there. Now, there's a rule that we have at whatreallyhappened.com. It's a rule that everybody should be playing by. Even the mafia has this rule, which is you don't go after the family of a political target. Go after the political target. And it could be argued that Melania, because she's highly visible now, along with Ivanka, that they're now public figures. But you don't go after the kid. You really don't. And I think Barron has enough challenges in his life. He doesn't need this kind of stuff. Now, Tucker Carlson came on out saying of Professor Karlan, this lady needs a shrink. Now, she describes herself as a snarky, bisexual Jewish woman. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Bob in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. It's interesting you say don't paint with the broad brush, yet you do it continually. You were putting down millennials not long ago. I remember recently when you talked about how, you throw in these stories about millennials, but there's a lot of really good people out there, a lot of young people who are doing the right thing, and they're supporting our government, they're supporting our military. Whether you like it or not, these people are trying to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, and quite frankly, here's part of the problem. When right-wing radio consistently puts down and alienates millennials with their conversations and trying to blame everything on them, they weren't alive when the foundations rose up. You were. Your parents were. If they weren't alive when a lot of these dystopic nightmares started coming into our system, you were. What did you do? What did your peers do? What did most of your callers do? They did nothing. So they need to, instead of looking out the window and pointing at all these kids, they need to go look in the mirror and blame themselves for a change.
Well, Bob, first of all, I don't recall generalizing all millennials, and if I have, I was wrong to do so. But as far as doing something about what's going on, I have been doing what I'm doing now for 25 years. I basically started about the same time as I got married, which is going on out there and reporting on what's going on in our government and corporations and trying to educate the public. So I'm definitely not sitting on my backside and just watching TV. Although, these days it's kind of strongly tempting, to do that, to just tune on out with all the bad stuff that's happening.
It seems to me, sir, that it is your generation who is always quoting movies. When something comes up, you'll say, oh, it reminds me of this movie. Oh, it reminds me of this. It reminds me of that. You're on Netflix. You're on Amazon. I don't do that. We don't do that. I know a lot of young people don't do that. So, the blame, honestly, we have to take some personal responsibility here. And quite frankly, I find a lot of, and don't hang up on me and get up at me, but I frankly find RBN to be a modified limited hangout because there's never any solutions. All you do is stir up the pot, and then you'll read some story towards the end about some homosexual or some millennial or something stupid. There's 350 million people in this country, and you're taking 0.5%, and projecting that onto America, why do we need to hear about that? We need to hear about something positive and uplifting solutions that we can come up with. And when people do that, generally it's what was.
Okay, Bob, what's your solution? Bob, I guess we lost him. All right, well, let's switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, what's up? Hey, this is Mike. I was going to call you about something else, about something I saw the Ron Paul Institute, but you just brought up about this woman, what's her name, Carlin?
Yes.
And I didn't even know this woman was Jewish, okay? And I just don't know what, Mike. I have a very conspiratorial mind, I get the feeling sometimes that some of these elite Jews, certain amount, both in Israel and the United States, and maybe in Britain, they actually purposely want to create anti-Semitism, a real, virulent anti-Semitism, to get Jews to all move to Israel. I can't figure out otherwise anything else. She has to go and even say that she's some kind of which is.
No, absolutely.
Some kind of Israel, or something like
Israel
that.
needs there to be anti-Semitism. First of all, to get Jews to move to Israel. Second of all, to keep the donation checks coming. That's why there are so many faked hate crimes that appear to be anti-Semitic attacks, and it turns out to be hoaxes.
I'm telling you, because I can't figure out anything else. I mean, this is so blatant. And there's so much, people don't understand. Just below the surface, there's a lot of anti-Semitism going on right now. You look at the comments, and a lot of these, I don't bother with mainstream news anymore. So you look at the comments all over the net, and you see it. It's, Zionists, Jews, this, that, you know what I mean? Now, I got no use for Zionists. The Zionists, but they're Christian Zionists are probably just as bad as the Jewish Zionists. They're all crazy. But, but what's happening is they're actually creating a climate where people are actually hating Jews, period. And, and I can't figure anything else about these people are doing this on purpose. I don't know whether Netanyahu is in charge of this or some kind of a AIPAC or the ADL, but that's the only thing I can figure, Mike. And, Mike, that leads me to the other thing. I saw Ron Paul recently. I mean, just before I turned you on, I had him on in a car driving home, on YouTube. And there's 14,000 more troops are being sent to the Middle East, I guess to Saudi Arabia or wherever, okay, to defend against Iran. This is an outrage. What are they going there for? They're not going there to protect the United States. They're going there to protect Saudi Arabia and Israel, and probably the oil interests of Exxon Mobil and Rothschild banks, and who knows what else. That's all they're doing. They're not protecting us. They're being misused. Mike, you know what I think we need? I think we need a draft. I'll tell you why. If you had a draft, they wouldn't dare do this stuff, because then they would be answerable. Then the people would speak up, because nobody wants to see their kids go, the elite, especially the elite, the people on both coasts who very few of their kids go into the military, okay? They don't care about middle America. Let somebody from your state to Indiana, or let somebody from North Carolina or Texas go, that's fine. We support you, thank you for your service. And if you get blown away, it's not my problem, okay? Or if you lose a part of your body over there, it's not our problem, okay? It's yours. But, thank you for your service. That's the attitude. Well, guess what? If you had people drafted from all over the country, all over society, including the rich people, including the powerful, including the overeducated, with no exemptions, too. Not like the Vietnam War, we had exemptions. Go to school. No exemptions. Everybody goes. You can bet that this would stop. Not to mention the riots that would occur, the kids who would go. You know, a lot of people don't know that what brought it into the Vietnam War more than anything else was you had insurrections in the military. That meant fragging or killing officers or, and high up enlisted men for getting the troops into combat situations where they didn't think it was necessary.
Yeah.
And troops just refusing to go out in the field, not to mention all the problems in a military basis in the United States, all the drugs and everything else that was going on, and all the protests. That's what brought that Vietnam War to an end finally, okay? That's why they got rid of the draft at that point, because they knew at some point they would get an all-volunteer military and they would be able to get away with their garbage, and as they're doing now. Because nobody seems to care otherwise. As long as working-class kids get, just about forced in the military because there's nothing else for them, okay, or they eat up the BS that they're told, like after 9/11, thinking that 9/11 really was conducted by 19 Arabs, with no help from this government, no help from the Israeli government, no help from the Saudi government. People believed that, and people went in willingly, including my son. A couple of years after 9/11, he graduated high school, and right away he wanted to go in the military, and he did. Thank God he got smart and did one enlistment, and that's it. Okay, and thank God he's okay. But the thing is, if I would have known what I know now, had I been red-pilled at the time, I would have done everything I could to discourage him from going in, period. But I believed the nonsense about 9/11 at the time. I believed the government's lies. At the time, I barely knew what to do with a computer, though. I didn't understand the internet. There was not much on. I didn't even know what a mouse was. Okay? So, I really didn't, quite understand, because there was a movement already that, like Alex Jones was already saying the false flag. So was the late Bill Cooper was saying it.
Yes.
Who I believe, by the way, was murdered by those police. He didn't shoot it out. They murdered him,
Yes.
He knew too much and was saying too much. But, I'd have known that, I would have discouraged my kids from going in. Well, only one went in, okay? But, and today I would, I have grandkids. They're much too young so far right now. But let's say a few years or something, if they ask me for advice, I tell them absolutely no. You're not going in there to defend the United States. You're going in there to defend countries that we have no business defending, and it's none of our business, or to meddle in other people's affairs. That's pretty much, the way it is. And like I said, and again, getting back to what this woman there, what's her name, Carlin?
Yes.
Turns out that fat colonel there, that fat neocon of a colonel there, was born in the Soviet Union, born in Ukraine, actually. He's another Jew. What's his name? Ludwig? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Still there, Mike? Yeah. What's that guy's name, the fat neocon colonel there?
I don't recall the name off the top of my head.
So, yeah. I mean, it's just disgusting. It's just disgusting what's going on. And like I said, I do have a conspiratorial mind, and I do believe this is being done on purpose. And that's about all I got to say, Mike. I don't know, do you want to answer this or wait to see if somebody else answers it? I can't.
Well, as
really
a matter
can't.
of fact,
I can't figure
we've
it out.
already got a phone call queued up that wants to reply to what you said. But, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the fabric of our society is badly shredding before our eyes, and I don't think it can hold together much longer, where people are just getting fed up with all this nonsense. They're getting fed up with the lies. I think this next economic downturn will result in rioting in the streets of America and bring down the bankers and the government. And I think the world will be much better off without the private central banks and without the United States trying to force its way onto everybody in the military. But I absolutely agree with you. Anybody who asks me today, I'm going to say, anything but the military. And I would refer them to that little article that was written by Major General Smedley Butler, War's a Racket. where he basically talks about how all of the military engagements that he did around the world were there to basically serve big business and had nothing to do with defending the United States.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Oh, by the way, Mike, I just remember the name Vindman. That's the name, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. That was the one. Okay. But you're right. Butler did it best. And very few people, unfortunately, even know who Smedley Butler is today. People don't realize he stopped the coup against FDR almost single-handedly. So,
well, it was all classified and hushed up.
I still think it's one of our presidents. Yeah. I still think FDR was one of our, greatest presidents. Okay, I think he basically saved this country. Right, with the reforms, he brought in badly needed reforms at the time. I'm talking about even before World War II. The guy who really saved the world at that time, World War II, was probably Stalin. I hate to admit it. Right, because the Soviet Union probably played more, probably did more to defeat Hitler than we played the major part against Japan, though. I'll say that. All right, Mike.
Well, definitely, we did did that.
And they won.
Okay, well, we got to take another break here for a commercial.
Warm. Okay,
all right, well, I'll definitely stay warm, and we'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Michael, to you, and good day. Yeah, Michael, you had a couple of calls back. That guy, Bob. Bob, what was your solution? I don't think Bob had a solution. He's just rambling on. But, Bob, the solution is talking about millennials. The millennials are being dummied down by our colleges and our high schools and our curriculum and the school system. And, that I don't know where the guy Bob was going at with millennials. The Chinese right now, their students are blowing our students away as far as education goes in China.
Yes.
And, the last caller you had, he was a pretty good caller. At the end, he said something about Stalin was help save the world. Where's this guy coming up with that? I mean, he started out good with the Jews, and the French Jews are going to Israel. The English Jews are all going there. Then when the terrorist attack in France, all these Jews saying, we're getting out of France. So, and, the guy was right. He was absolutely right. These Jews are trying to start all this nonsense so they can go to Israel. The Israelis are doing it. Matter of fact, Michael, on Drudge today in Breitbart, they're talking about Epstein. This guy Epstein was working for Mossad. I don't know if you had a chance to see my Drudge or Breitbart today, but Epstein was a Mossad agent. Did you hear about that?
Yes. He was running a honey trap operation.
That's on the Drudge. Okay, and I'm going to give your listening audience and you, Michael, I tell you exactly why they're going after Donald Trump, and I told you in the past. I'm going to make sure you understand it this time. They're going after Donald Trump this heavy because of immigration, because Trump is trying to stop this. The demon rats from getting all these millions of more voters that they're going to need because the Afro-Americans are waking up, and they're not going to vote Democrat much longer. So they're going to bring all these illegals in here. They can dummy them up with free housing, Section 8 housing, all that, so they can vote Democrat for the next 50 years. The Hispanics, and they're not Latins. Let's get that straight. They're Hispanics, okay? And I did.
Yes.
I want to get to you in a minute, Michael, about the Vikings we watched last night. It was fantastic. It was basically telling you they even went to Constantinople. They were in Russia. They went all over England. I mean, it was fantastic. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Vikings. It was great. And it's exactly what's happening today. It's all cutthroat. There's going to be always one guy on top of the pile. There's always going to be a cream. The cream is going to rise to the top. That's exactly what's happening. As far as what's going on with this impeachment nonsense, and you're talking about that schmuck woman, look, they're all schmucks. They're putzes. Okay, you got a bunch of putzes. Let them go to Israel if that's what they want. But, Thomas Jefferson had a great saying, Michael. You know what his saying was? A little rebellion here and now is a good thing. Once in a while is a good thing. A little rebellion once in a while is a good thing. And that was Thomas Jefferson. Was a great man. And you also had John Adams when he took an inaugural address when he said, to be in America now, if you're to own a gun is basically, if you have a gun, you're a citizen. Without a gun, you're a subject. That's what he's saying, Adams. If you want to be a citizen of this country, you got to have a gun. If you don't have a gun, you'll be a subject of the country. Think about that. Those were great men. Now, these callers you got calling in are saying nonsensical stuff like, let me that last caller you had, let me tell him something. The one guy I want him to read a book on is Curtis LeMay. We'd have never won World War II, sir, if it weren't for Curtis LeMay, who happened to run as with George Wallace. Did you know that? The only reason we won World War II, Michael, is because of Curtis LeMay. Did you know that?
Well, Curtis
You agree
LeMay
with that,
certainly
Michael?
contributed, but getting on back, the fact is that the Nazi forces trying to go into Russia, they suffered their biggest defeat there, and so they had less equipment and less personnel to work with after
had nothing
that.
to do with that. That was Michael. The Russians had nothing to do with that. It was because of God, and it was froze. Adolf Hitler lost 100,000 crack troops. His best troops froze to death. They were like popsicles. They froze to death because they had the right gear. It had nothing to do with the Russians that had a better armed forces. It had because of God intervening with the weather. Now, if you want to talk about the timeline, if you go to 1947 and Curtis LeMay doesn't do what he does, and everybody in your audience is going to call and say, man, that guy Tom was right on the money. If 1947 goes on that war 2 more years, Adolf Hitler has the V1, the V2 rockets perfected, and he crushes the world. Nobody beats Hitler. Because once that V2, other than the United States having an atomic bomb, yes, with the Manhattan Project. But if Adolf Hitler would have got the Manhattan Project before the United States, we'd have lost. Guaranteed, because he had the V2 rocket. He had a delivery system. We did not have a delivery system, except the bomb, which they use the B-52. But I'm talking about Hitler, 2 more years if the war goes on. If Curtis LeMay, who was a great American, he had his ways, and he's the one that told Kennedy, I'll knock out these communists in Cuba in 24 hours. The whole thing will be over. And they thought he was nuts. And he did. Michael, if it weren't for Curtis LeMay knocking out Pina Munda, we lose World War II. You understand that?
Yeah, I understand
I read a
that.
documentary on LeMay was a genius when it came to that. And he's the reason. It wasn't because Stalin was an animal. He was 10 times worse than Adolf Hitler. He killed more people than Hitler did, Stalin. How's this guy saying that Stalin was a good guy? Stalin was a beast. He was a devil. He's a bigger devil than Hitler. Now,
Okay,
and all these people realize,
Tom, I need to back up here a little bit and correct you on your history. Okay, the B-52 was not put into service until 1955. So, in point of fact, they didn't use the B-52 to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All right, I'll be back after.
The B-2 rocket. Oh, hang on.
You said that. Okay. We're going to let you go here, and we've got more phone calls when we get back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Chance in West Virginia. And I know you're calling to respond to one of the other callers, but again, we're trying to enforce this rule. 1 call per caller per day. So, Chance, what's on your mind?
I appreciate you letting me call back, Michael. I wanted to elaborate on what Mark said. I agree with him to a point, and I'll give you my reasons. But first of all, I believe we've all got to get out of this Demo-Publican, Republican paradigm because, there's no difference. One drives us over the cliff at 100 miles an hour. The other one drives us over the cliff at 50 miles an hour. Either way, we're dead when we hit bottom. Now, to get back to what Mark said. Now, Michael, as I've gotten older, there's 3 lessons I've learned. I'm maybe only 5 years younger than you. And these are the 3 lessons. When 2 people are fighting, there's always somebody behind the scenes who profits from it. Always. That's number 1. Number 2, always follow the money. And now, getting back to what Mark said, he could be correct about the Jewish question here. Because I found out that you'll have many enemies in your lifetime. But they'll always, your biggest enemy behind the scenes will always be your own kind. So I believe the synagogue of Satan couldn't care less about their average Jews. They're using them. They're using them. Because if you look at history and all the traditional value, yes, if you're a Jew, your biggest enemy will be another Jew. If you're a Muslim, your biggest enemy will be another Muslim. If you're a Christian, same thing. And the reason I say this is because now, if you look behind organizations that were quote-unquote Jewish, synagogue of Satan, I call it now. I try to differentiate between Jews and synagogue of Satan. If you look behind all the sabotaging of American family values, it's always been the synagogue of Satan who's went against American traditional family values, not your average working Jew. So therefore, they're willing to sacrifice their own people. So Mark might have a point there. They're going to stir up this anti-Semitism only for their benefit, the synagogue of Satan's benefit. So in other words, they don't care about their own fellow Jews. And they should realize that too, just as we all should realize what I just said. This is a very ingenious game plan, Michael. It's
yes.
obvious. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
It's a very ingenious.
If you look at history, there's been their governments will sacrifice their own people in order to get what they want. And in fact, we're coming up in a couple of days on the anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, which we now know was provoked by FDR to get the U.S. into the war against Japan.
And this is why I can't understand when your one caller praised FDR. I cannot understand why. See, this is why I say we have to break away from this stupid Republican, Demopublican paradigm. They're both not for us. You know, I can't understand why people bicker about what have they gained from this argument, to hear themselves talk? I mean, it's ridiculous. When are people going to wake up to this? That's all I have to say, Michael, and I thank you very much for letting me call back. I just wanted to make that point. It astounds me how people can't put these pieces of the puzzle together yet. Because it is down to the wire.
They're still watching
the world.
They're still watching corporate media, and they're basically still taking the blue pill, to use that paradigm. So thank you for the phone call, and apparently Mark in North Carolina has called back in with his response. And I think we need to definitely go back to that rule. 1 call per caller per day. So Mark, what's on your mind?
I just want to answer Tom in 2 sentences that he said. First of all, if JFK had listened to Curtis LeMay, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation now, because this world would probably be a bunch of nuclear radioactive ashes. The other thing is about the Soviet Union, World War II. Yeah, winter helped in the beginning, but once the Russians got their act together, they totally overwhelmed the German army, first at Stalingrad, then at Kursk. They completely destroyed pretty much the offensive ability of the Nazis at that point, and it was only a matter of time until they rolled into Berlin. Okay, so let's get that straight. Curtis LeMay was a madman. If we had listened to him again, we probably wouldn't have a planet today. JFK did the right thing, including taking our missiles out of Turkey. That's all I got to say, Mike. Okay, thanks. Bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot, and we're going to go back to Bob in North Carolina, who apparently lost audio. And he says he's got a few points to wrap up. So, Bob, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Just barely. Can you talk a little closer to the microphone?
Okay. Is that better?
That's much better.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. So therefore, thank you. I'll try to be respectful. The answer to the epistemological question is, if you're worried about the pedagogy, then it is the andragogy. In other words, what I'm saying is, if we're worried about how our children are being taught, it's up to the adults to teach them. And who is teaching these children these things? It is the adults, whether it's the leftists or rightists. I don't think any of the millennials allowed the leftists to take over. Many of them have been co-opted through their thoughts, and it is up to us to help bring them over to our side with solutions instead of alienating by blaming everything on them. Now, as far as solutions go, we can go all the way back to classical Greek Athens, where they had something called a citizen's dividend, and no one is asking for something for free. I get so tired of hearing, oh, they just want free stuff. They want free stuff. Well, let me tell you something. We pay taxes. We pay a larger proportion of taxes than the rich do when it comes to daily living, housing, and everything else. So therefore, yeah, we do want something for the taxes we pay. And there is no such thing as the free stuff, except when you're talking about the super elite capitalists who actually can do a carry trade. They can go to the Federal Reserve window, these large banks and banksters can go there, and they can make a carry trade all day long. I listen to Bloomberg. I'm an investor. Okay, these guys brag about their carry trade if nothing else happens. So when you go back to classical Athens and the citizen's dividend, even our founding fathers, Thomas Paine, had spoken of this. And no one's asking for something for nothing, but if we hold these lands to be usufruct, meaning that the use of the land and the fruits of this land that comes out of it belongs to all of us. This land is your land, this is my land. From California to the New York harbors, or whatever the song goes. This is what this was talking about, but this has been stolen from us by the old school bad guys back in the 1800s, and I get it. So everyone has been born into a situation that they can hardly get out of, especially with the Federal Reserve. So, but you're asking me for a solution. Here's the thing. Every man in my family has served in the military. I don't know how many people call in that have ever served in the military, number one. Okay? So we feel like we have an obligation to our country and that the country owes us something. You know, the richest 1% own as much wealth as the middle and lower classes combined. The richest 10% control 84% of the total value of stocks and funds. Now, the Dow Industrial, since Trump has been elected, is up 50%. Had I listened to RBN and right-wing radio about the collapse of the dollar, everything's going to collapse. I've called you years and years ago, and I told you the dollar is not about to collapse. It's the world reserve currency. I get so tired of hearing these people compare it to the German model. It's a world reserve currency. I get that we're using it as a weapon. I am very well educated on what's happening with what's going on. But no one wants something for free. We want a piece of the pie. And so what we need to do is, become investors, learn about the stock market. It's not that hard to learn how to read a chart and how to understand it. And the biggest thing is it's psychological operation. It's fear and greed. And so when most of the people are trying to sell the stocks as they're going down, the pros are down there buying the dips, continually making money. They're not beggar thy neighbor. But on RBN, what are they asking for? Beggar thy neighbor. You're asking for people to donate. Okay, you're asking for a handout. You're asking for welfare. And you're not self-sufficient. You're not doing your own investing. You spend so much time reading about the negative news. Why not invest in the stock market? But now it's almost too late. It's almost too late. But you can make money on the way down. The stock market goes down a lot faster than it goes up. So there's a lot of things that we could do. There's a lot of good attorneys and judges. Do you understand that Trump has put in nearly 120 appellate circuit and judicial courts into the courts already? This is not talked about a whole lot, but this is what's happening.
Okay, well, Bob, the first comment I want to make is the dollar is no longer the world reserve currency. It is still a global reserve currency, but more and more countries are now conducting business without it. And I think anybody who's smart enough to read a chart is going to understand that sooner or later corrections happen. And great that you can make money during a correction. Yep. Of course, you're making your money off of somebody else's losses.
That's called capitalism, my friend. That's called capitalism. And what we have now is a monopoly capitalism, socialist, fascist program that's going on. It is not Fordism, as some of your hosts like to call it. It is not a Fordism economic model. Wages is not doubled. So back then he was talking about, Ford was talking about running cars on compost as derivative. None of that's happened. So it's not Fordism. So, it is possible for us to come up with solutions, but if we continually just talk about the negative, it's kind of ridiculous. So, name me,
okay,
who are the Uniteds?
Bob,
I call it guys on the left.
Bob, what is your solution?
Bob, Well, I just said, okay, for instance, Elizabeth Warren is saying, and I'm not saying I'm going to vote for her, I'm a Democrat or anything like that, but Elizabeth Warren is simply saying that these corporate capitalist guys who are making their money $50 million over it, then we will tax the first dollar over $50 million at 90%. But what do we hear in the media? They want a 90% tax. Yeah, after $50 million, it's never explained that way on right-wing media. You know, number two, all you hear about is how, well, Pocahontas or some little, ad hominem attack about her. So what? Whoop-de-doo. How about breaking up the monopoly? How about that? That's what she's talking about. How about a conversation about her policy instead of an ad hominem attack on her or me? Because every time I call into a show, when I call the leftist, I'm called a racist, a bigot, and homophobe. And if I call the right-wingers, I'm called a Marxist, socialist, radical, communitarian or something. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So all we do is divide, divide, divide. We feed the airways with all this nattering nabob of negativity. And quite frankly, it doesn't help anyone. All it does is I think that the guys are sitting there in the back room, they're rubbing their hands together going, it's working perfectly. Listen to them. They're dividing themselves up. They're fighting amongst themselves. I call it crabs in a bucket. As soon as one of the crabs tries to get out, there's guys trying to pull them back in. Oh, you want something for free. Oh, you want this. We serve our country. You know, when we pay our taxes, that helps provide the sewer systems and the roads and everything else that goes with utilities that the large Walmarts and the corporations, the businesses put in. So we should have a part of that. We need to have a conversation
roads are falling
about
apart.
taking back our share.
Bob, our roads are falling apart. There's major problems with the water system. The money is not being spent on this country. It's being spent for war. And this seems to be a trend that is increasing moving forward. And I'm hearing all that you're saying. I'm hearing the words and everything, but I haven't heard anything that sounds like an actual workable solution. And so,
I can only change my life, sir.
Okay,
so
well then,
my life, what I
don't call up here and don't call up here and scream that we're not coming up with solutions here.
Are you banning me?
No, I'm not banning you, but I'm simply saying, don't call in and complain that, we're not out here talking solutions because, you can't find one. And as far as the adults teaching the millennial generation, that was all done with Common Core, and the parents were not allowed to see the curriculum.
I saw the curriculum. You don't have children, sir. You don't have a game in it. There's so many people who call in that don't have children in the schools. I'm so proud of my children in schools. I have 2 children who are sophomores, and they do quite well. And, at that school, they read The Brave New World. They read a lot of books that are written. I'm into their curriculum. Yeah, they changed the math up a little bit, but that was only to help them find a solution. Because if you don't know what 9 times 12 is, you do know what 12 times 10 is, and that's how you do it. So, really, you guys don't understand what's going on. You don't have any experience today. And so all you're doing is, like I said, you're going to go into one of those for a man and a degree. What's wrong with you guys? I'm fine. Well, guess what? So
okay,
I changed
Bob,
my life and my family's life by becoming an investor and working harder and going down and serving my country. Bob. Yeah,
yeah, okay.
So much for Free Speech Radio.
Okay, we're having audio problems. Your call is coming across very muffled, and you talk faster than Tom in Florida does. So we're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. I'm probably going to have to take you through this next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Man, I don't know how I can compete with Tom and Bob. And, Mike, Bob did make some good points about Wall Street, but that's not, we don't have capitalism, Bob. I hope Bob calls back tomorrow. I just want him to answer this one question. Why is the Federal Reserve pumping liquidity into the banks? Because he says he works on Wall Street, right? Or the stock market? If he knows this,
yes.
This is the answer to that. Why is the Federal Reserve pumping liquidity into the banks? And Bob kind of said, we ain't got much longer to go. So that kind of worries me right there about something something's going on in the stock market. We know, we know what's going on, but Bob kind of hinted at that. I'll hold over.
Yeah, Dustin, I got to put you on hold. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And just pick up where you left off there, Dustin.
Again, Bob says that's capitalism. To manipulate interest rates is not capitalism. That's corporatism. That's fashion. Why don't they float the interest rate the way it's supposed to be? Let it free float. How long would the economy last then? You know what I mean? Like, let it go. Let the banks die. Because there'll be other banks. But it's all manipulated. But to say, oh, that's capitalism on one hand, and then he says, oh, we got to, we tax the rich and this or that. Well, yeah, everybody should be paying this. If you agree with this, Mike, the same amount of taxes. Taxes shouldn't be that high anyway. But I just don't. I mean, the richer people, they got all the loopholes. They shouldn't have no loopholes. That's another thing Trump never fixed. All the loopholes. The Cayman Islands are still there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He made some good points, but then he got wishy-washy in spots. Like Elizabeth Warren, she's not going to fix. How long has Elizabeth Warren been in government anyway, Mike? Do you know?
Ever since she was a Native American.
That's a long time. But I mean, she's not going to fix crap. Come on now. Elizabeth Warren come on. Who do you think her donors are, man? The regular people? I don't think so, dude. Her donors are Wall Street, the bankers, and corporations. She's not going to fix anything. And she lied about her whole thing about going to college, how she was a Native American. So I'm sorry. That makes her, in my book, untrustworthy. They're all untrustworthy, Mike. They're all crap. Mitch McConnell's crap, Paul Ryan's crap, Nancy Pelosi's crap. They're all liars. You know why they lie? Because they got what they got. So they can lie. They got lobbyists. They get, oh man. I don't know. Bob was all over the map. And then on the Tom.
Yeah, it was hard
did he say God made it snow?
Yeah, I think he did. And it was kind of hard to figure out what Bob was trying to say, because he was kind of bouncing all over. He was bouncing off the walls, to be honest.
Yeah, well, he made some good points, but then he just made some bad points. We don't have capitalism, okay? But getting on to Tom, Mike, to say God made it snow and that's what beat the German, dude, the Germans got crushed. Like Mark said, at Kursk and stuff, they lost like most of the Wehrmacht, right? They lost most of their Wehrmacht forces, the divisions there, and they lost supply lines and stuff. That's what you call that's the weather, man. That has nothing to do with God. They got stuck in that weather and they got crushed. And that's the weather they should have known about in that region of the world. That's all I got to say, Mike. Have a good night.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a break for station identification here, and we'll be back with another phone call. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to take a phone call from Dave in Michigan, and then we're going to go back to enforcing the one call per caller per day rule, because every time I sort of relax the enforcement, people take advantage of that, and it just got a little out of control today here. So Dave in Michigan, what do you have to say?
Hey, Mike, I'm sorry. I've only called your show about 3 times in my life, so I didn't really know you had a one-call rule until I called back in. But anyway, Bob did make a lot of good points. I'd like to say we do not have capitalism anymore. I call it Capitol Hillism. And
I like that.
Have you ever heard of the book Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars?
No, I haven't, but it sounds like one I'd like to read.
Yeah, well, I know the guy who wrote that book. I have a friend, his name is Hartford Van Dyke. He wrote that book. He also wrote a book called The Skeleton in Uncle Sam's Closet. He's almost 80 years old. June, he'll be 80. He was on Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked. His uncle was he was brass in the Navy. His father was a wherever pots and pan salesman. He went door to door in Hawaii selling pots and pans. And back in 1940, a lot of Japanese people lived there, and Hartford's father spoke fluent Japanese. He was knocking on doors, and the Japanese women would invite him into their homes. He'd be selling them pots and pans in the kitchen while the men folk were in the back rooms plotting Pearl Harbor, speaking Japanese. He heard it all. He documented it all. 6 weeks or more before, I can't remember the exact time, but it's at least 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, he gave his uncle all of his data that he collected, and his uncle sent a communique to Washington, D.C., and I can't remember, he details it all out. But he, the gentleman that he sent the communique to about the pending attack, Roosevelt got a hold of the communique, and he put those two men in the brig. And then he had the island planned for espionage instead of an attack, which meant they parked all the fighter planes on the tarmac in clusters of 3 facing each other, where their propellers were as close to each other as possible, and all the ammunition for the planes was buried underground. They made them stand down. They knew the attack was imminent, and they knew exactly when it was going to happen. And then Hartford's uncle had his father, plan for the attack for his family, by draining and filling the water tanks and getting canned food and whatnot. And he had, on the morning of the attack, Hartford was in his fenced backyard. He was 18 months old. He was playing in the yard when the planes flew overhead, started bombing. His dad snatched him up and put him in the bathtub with his mother under a mattress. And then he watched the bombing from the roof. And then he went down to the pier and he, to help. And there was so much annihilation and devastation and, men with limbs blown off. He actually got sick. He threw up. And then he regained himself, and he got his handkerchief, and he started, he got it soaking wet, and he started dripping water in these men. There were thousands of men, lined up, laying in the streets and on the pier. And anyway, it's a really great read. The book is available on the number 4-CD, as in CD. It's a shortcut to a website, Four Corners Doctrine. CD stands for Corners Doctrine. So it's the numeral 4-CD.com. And then there is a Hartford Van Dyke section there. The man is a self-taught lawyer, common law lawyer. When his father told him about what happened, his uncle was still alive. Hartford was 28 years old. He had his own, he was electronics engineer, and the man is a genius. And he had his own company, and his father made him promise not to tell anybody till his uncle died, because he was getting a pension, from the Navy. And so he held off. And then there was some attack during, a false flag attack during Vietnam, the Tet Offensive or something that set Hartford off. And what he did was he wrote a letter, 535 letters to Washington, D.C. about what happened, what he remembered. His father told him the story about Pearl Harbor. And he didn't get one response. And so then he got back with his dad. He told him what he did, and his dad, refreshed his memory, and he kind of had made a few mistakes in the letters, and so he rewrote them, and then he sent them another letter, everyone in Washington, and no response whatsoever. And then at some point he wrote the book, A Skeleton in Uncle Sam's Closet. He also wrote this book called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Have you ever heard of Deborah Tavares?
The name sounds familiar.
She goes on these shows like yours, and she is brilliant. She's a developer. Her and her husband and her family go way back in California, and they started seeing patterns. And she's discovered she's got a website. It's called StopTheCrime.net. She's the one who really exposed the smart meters and stuff like that. And so she talks about this book, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and how it was found in some Boeing executive years ago bought a copy machine at a military auction. The Air Force Base in Oregon was having an auction, and they were selling this copy machine, and this Boeing executive had an identical machine that his was on the fritz, so he wanted to buy that as a spare parts for it. And he bought that, and when he tore it apart, he found inside, buried in it, was a book called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And he read the book, and he freaked out. He went in a cold sweat, and he called a buddy of his who was some publisher of either a magazine or a Patriot publisher. And so he told him, you need this book. And so that guy ended up publishing that book in his magazine, I believe. And so about 5 years ago, I was on this Patriot call out of Colorado, and it was my first time on. It was a Friday night, and I'll never forget it. They had a special guest on, Hartford Van Dyke, and he starts telling this story, and he writes this book, and he's in Oregon, and he's driving, and he sees a full dress military guy hitchhiking, and he's like, you never see that. So he pulled over and he said, what's wrong? And the guy said, I'm 3 hours late to duty station and I'm 3 hours away. And Hartford says, get in, I'll drive you. So he drives him to this Air Force base, and as he gets to the gate, he reaches in the back, and he just had those books published, and he had about 80 copies in the back of his car. And he said he handed the kid, he told him all about the book, and then he handed him a copy, and the kid got out. He watched him walk through the gate and past the guard shack and into the shack, and then he drove away. Well, I get chills every time I tell the story, because that coincided. That kid started reading that book, and he got so scared he buried it in that copy machine, and then the copy machine went on the fritz, and they auctioned it off, and that Boeing guy bought it. And there's a book out there called The Report from Iron Mountain. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, that one I've heard of.
Okay, so Hartford read that report from Iron Mountain, and I guess it's pretty technical. So he rewrote it in layman's terms and titled it Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and he signed it with the backwards date. His pseudonym was the backwards date of Pearl Harbor. And when that Boeing executives, I think it was published in Popular Mechanics or something, and a friend of Hartford saw it in the magazine, and he knew Hartford was the author. And so he told Hartford, hey, the government is taking credit for your book, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. They, since it got published, they're claiming that they wrote that book. And so he says, Hartford, you need to put it out there that you're the author. And so Hartford started a campaign. And anyway, a lot of this information is available on that 4-cd.com website, and there's another website, scannedretina.com. This guy, Arnie Reisner, he's put all of Hartford stuff. The guy's brilliant. He's written a lot of great documents and
Dave?
common law stuff. And yes, sir.
I need you to wrap up here, Dave. Okay, we've got other callers waiting on the line.
I'm wrapping up. And I just had to call back in when that guy said that Roosevelt was one of our best presidents. Roosevelt's a traitor, and he needs to be tried for treason for the traitor that he is. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks for letting me share.
All right, well, we're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And again, a reminder, I am taking off at the bottom of the hour for a little family celebration, and the time constraints are coming from an event that we're all going to jointly. And there'll be a replay for the last half hour of my show. And then Steve Elkins is going to be taking the microphone for John Stadmiller's program here. So let's take another phone call from Paul in New Jersey. Aloha, Paul. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Concerning Bob and his call, I wanted to just point out that he was advocating for a graduated income tax. And as we know, graduated income tax is one of the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. So you don't really get more communist than that. And people are going to have to be able to be brave enough in public to just say, yeah, certain things from the Communist Manifesto make absolute sense. And we have to be honest with it. And you shouldn't ridicule people like actually one of the talk show hosts on your network who ridiculed me because I also advocated graduated income tax, as did Dwight D. Eisenhower and many of the presidents who allowed it to persist after World War II. To me, it makes absolute sense that after so many millions you make in a year, that after a certain amount of money, after that, it gets taxed at a higher rate. I think that's totally reasonable and sensible. Partly because I believe that just like in the our founding fathers wanted a division of political power, and that's why they created the bicameral House and Senate and the three branches of the government. I also believe that allowing too much economic power in the hands of a very small and potentially ethnic elite is very dangerous, and it has to be combated, and it has to be controlled. Why does economic power not be considered a form of power? And why do we not consider an excessive concentration of economic power, because it is power, to be a potential problem? I argue that it is.
I would agree with you on that one.
Lots of
I would agree with you on that. And unfortunately, that economic power serves only itself, and will seek to acquire more wealth, meaning more power, until you have a society that's very heavily destabilized, which is what we have today.
Yes, and I believe a great also indicator of whether you live in a capitalist society is whether you have a stock market. I see that as one of the primary indicators, and because under the Soviets there was no stock market, but today in modern Russia,
the government owned everything.
Right, and so and China today has a stock market, and that's why I try to tamp down a lot of the Cold War rhetoric that I see in the patriotic movements and among the patriots, that maybe they're boomers like myself, right? But
yeah,
they continue to perpetuate the old enemies of before the Soviet collapse, and I think the Soviets, the modern Russians of today, they denounce the Soviets, and they're distancing themselves from them. So why do you want to make the Russians an enemy? Likewise with the Chinese. I don't think the Chinese really, and I think they're in the process of disassociating themselves from Mao, and they're modernizing. And we can't force them to be modern cultural degenerates just like ourselves right away, right? And I don't think we should foist our cultural Marxism among the socially conservative Chinese, right? Which is ironic, because they're capitalist, very capitalist now. So everybody's like a hybrid to an extent. The Russians, the Chinese, some have actually more free market than we do, and deregulation of business, and environmentally, for example. But some are more regulated socially and don't want to go along with the modern, what I would argue, cultural Marxist American agenda. And they don't want to, upturn and destabilize their cultural mores. So I just think, and I agree with the millennial Bob in the sense that, there is a problem with us boomers, and we boomers have to be aware of our foibles, of the world we left the young kids. We have to take some blame for it. But in my case, I'm very proud of my voting record and would gladly show any millennial or Generation Z, for that matter, that I never really voted just strictly along party lines, and was never a person to indulge in excessive factionalism and being just such a party hack, or beholden to the benefits of my party. I kind of try to, when I can, follow George Washington's advice of being concerned about the nation overall and not the party. But I also would argue that the young kids should take a look at, and I put a lot of the blame of what's happened to modern America and their condition, because I believe its migration has really pushed wages down. I think migration has driven the rents up. Because of that, I think that's what caused a lot of problem among the millennials. And the millennials should remember, most of the people on the Republic Broadcasting Network have been against those policies. So really, they need to take some of the rhetoric over to NPR, to the more liberal stations who are more advocates for open borders and mass migration.
Okay, well, Paul, we're coming up here on a commercial break, and of course, following that commercial break, I've got about another 5 minutes of show to do, and I'm going to try and actually fit some news in to our programming here. I'm already getting emails complaining about the number of callers that we had today and how most of them really didn't make any sense. Yeah. So thank you for the phone call, Paul. We're going to let you go, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back to our show here, and we've closed the phone lines here, and I'm already getting emails. Too many callers calling back in. So as of tomorrow, we're going to go back to enforcing the rule, 1 call per caller per day, and not turn it into this little spitting contest between, dueling callers here, because it's not good for the show and it's not good for the show's reputation. All right, so I got about 5 minutes before I'm getting out of here. And as you're probably already aware, Justin Trudeau, along with Macron and some of the other people at the NATO conference, basically mocked President Trump. And they're already saying this is not going to end well for boy blackface, which was the little subtext behind Trump's comment about Trudeau being two-faced. And already Biden has got a new ad out there claiming the world is laughing at Donald Trump. And that's why we can't give him 4 more years as commander-in-chief. And, who knows who was saying what when they think it's a private moment. And if the mic hadn't been hot, it wouldn't have happened. Remember when Obama was talking with that Russian diplomat and the mic was live and said, when I get my second term, we'll be able to get some stuff done with Russia here. Now, Hillary Clinton was on the Howard Stern show, basically trying to dispel the long persistent rumors of lesbianism, saying she actually likes men. And partway through the interview, she had one of her famous coughing fits, and she hit the cough button, but you could hear her in the background for, on another mic. And apparently the coughing fit went on for quite a while. And so they're saying Hillary's health is again an issue. Well, only if she's planning on stepping on in. And I think that if the Democrats succeed in getting Trump out of the White House or damaging him enough where he can't mount a good campaign in 2020, I think Hillary's going to step on in. And the fact that she's missed the filing deadline for the New Hampshire primary, I don't think that's going to be an impediment if she goes for a brokered convention. And they can definitely do it. There is no clear front runner among the current Democratic lineup of potential candidates. Joe Biden is self-destructing, and the others are just weak. The only credible candidates out there is Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, and Tulsi Gabbard. Trump is out there saying to Pelosi, Schiff, and Nadler, if you're going to impeach me, do it fast. Well, he's going to get what he wants because they're talking about having the impeachment vote before Congress, before Christmas, rather. And over in Oregon, U.S. House candidate Mark Roberts, who's running as an independent conservative in Oregon, which means he's there to divide the GOP vote and help push the Democrat into the lead, tweeted out that First Lady Melania Trump is an hourly whore. Now, that's a wholly inappropriate comment to make. And again, the family is off limits. Now, if Melania said something that was controversial, you can respond to that. But just to come on out and call her an hourly whore, that was way, way, way over the line. The Democrats have a new talking point now. Their media is moving on to a new line of attack that Trump's mental state is deteriorating dangerously due to the fact that he's going to be impeached. So they're back to pushing the 25th Amendment to basically get rid of Trump. They just hate him so. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is saying he would consider Kamala Harris, who's dropped out of the race, would consider her for vice president, and says she's also capable of being a Supreme Court justice. Apparently, Biden is seriously considering Kamala Harris as his running mate if he wins the Democratic Party nomination. I don't think he will. Now, Hunter Biden's lawyer has abruptly quit after Hunter blows off a child support hearing. And this goes back to the fact that a DNA test has proven that Hunter is the father of a baby born to London Roberts, 28, who was a stripper that he met at a strip club, and nature took its way. She's a DC stripper originally from Arkansas, and she's suing Biden for $11,000 in legal fees and child support. Okay, there's the music. It's time for us to get out of here, and we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.